Okay, and we're live. Danielle, it's so nice to meet you live. I love our topic, navigating life after a late diagnosis. I absolutely love that topic because it's a personal one and one that so many of my clients manage and deal with and need to kind of navigate through. So I'm really excited for today's talk. We have a lot of questions, so I want to start immediately to just welcome everybody to the Divergent Discussion. My name is Carla. I'm a registered psychotherapist, the clinical lead at Caboose, and I'm also a PhD researcher. Caboose is for neurodivergent people and the organizations and communities around them. Caboose is the platform that bridges the gap between lived experience and everyday reality through community built by people who get it, actually neurodivergent individuals, and the practical guides designed to actually help wherever life may take you. And then first a reminder that this Divergent Discussion is being recorded and will be uploaded to our YouTube channel. We'll also have time at the end for audience questions, so please feel free to drop your questions at the chat box on the side, and we'll see how many we can get through at the end. Okay, now I would love to do a bio on you, Danielle, and I'm going to try and get your name right. So Danielle Cudjoe-Michalski is the founder of Thinking Light Coach, a certified neurodiverse coach, consultant, and a TEDx speaker. Throughout her career, Danielle has held key roles in various global organizations, including contributing as a project manager in vaccine development, which is amazing as well, where she was awarded twice alongside receiving a prestigious Diversity and Inclusion Award for leading and campaigning a neuro-inclusive workplace culture. She also co-founded and co-led the Neurodiversity Network, NDN, at GSK, where she helped shape initiatives designed to empower neurodivergent individuals and embed inclusion at a systems level. Danielle brings both professional expertise and lived experience as a neurodivergent individual to her work. Through coaching, facilitation, and organizational consultancy, she supports individuals and teams to build more inclusive, strength-led ways of working and being, something we so desperately need. Welcome, Danielle. I'm so happy to have you.
Thank you so much.
Okay, so when you look back at receiving your diagnosis, what emotions came up for you in those first moments? And how would you say that you processed them?
So interestingly, just for the audience to give them an idea of what my lived experience is, I was diagnosed with dyslexia in my final year of university, which is very common now, but back when I was uni, it was not very common. And just to give people a bit of a timeline, the internet had just started. So let's just give you an idea of, number one, how old I am, and also a little bit about the times, because there wasn't anything to Google. There was nowhere to get information. Accessibility wasn't like that. So you went a lot by what you were kind of advised. And at that time, when I got diagnosed, I was advised not to disclose it. So it's very different to the times we are now. My second diagnosis was only just done last year. And I got my formal diagnosis of ADHD, and that's combined ADHD, which I got last October. So I'm in two different places when it comes to that question. So how do I feel about my diagnosis, knowing they're nearly 20 years apart? The first one was not surprising and probably more relief, because when I was young, my mum knew I had difficulties with reading and writing, but I was able to articulate verbally. I had comprehension. And she actually went to my primary school and asked them if I was potentially had any learning challenges and dyslexia. And they said no. Back in the 80s, it was all about left-handedness. And that kind of took over a lot of the dialogue. And a lot of older people probably would recognize that kind of social awareness around left hand and right hand, which isn't so much now. So my mum did the best thing she did. She told me that she thought I was dyslexic, and the school said no, and we're just going to work through it. And so I was aware of this word and aware of potentially a challenge, but we were working more for the deficit space. So we never really explored some of my strengths. So as I grew up through education and through university, I was very much on a deficit model. I wasn't very aware about my strength. My confidence was low. I had spouts of mental health in my final year, and it was a conversation in someone in the lab that mentioned the word dyslexic, and my ears pricked up. And then I ran over to them and I asked them, what was that? How did they know? Knowing that I was older and had more autonomy around pushing things over myself. And they told me information. I gave some work into my university department. They assessed it and said, we really recommend you go for an assessment. They said some people don't want to do it because they don't want to find out they're not dyslexic, but we recommend. And I was like, I just want to know. I went there, had an assessment, and the guy that assessed me was amazing. And he was really shocked that I actually got to university without an assessment because my dyslexic was so severe. But he said I was doing a lot of masking and had quite a high IQ in some respects to be able to cope with some of the things. So I had learned behavior, which again, a strength I didn't know I had. And he was so empathetic and so supportive that he didn't actually wait for my 2-week report to tell me my results. Back then, you had to wait for a formal report for 2 weeks before you got your results. And I was leaving his practice. And as I walked to the door, he said, I have to tell you, I can't have you wait. And I said, please, because I'm about to graduate. I've just got to give my dissertation in a couple of months' time. Because you're severely dyslexic. Your report's coming. And by the time the report came in, I had very minimal support before I graduated. So that was that story. And I suppose that story came with loads of questions, loads of relief to find that what my mum knew and what I knew was true. My experience was true. It's true to me. And I say that to a lot of people, a lot of my clients, whether they get diagnosed or not. It really is, your experience is true for you and you should really hold that. My mum was very angry. She probably grieved more than I did because she knew and she thought of all the support I could have got. On top of that, they also said I wouldn't go to university. So my mum demanded me to go to my primary school, find that teacher and tell them that not only was I at university and graduated, but I was also dyslexic.
That's awesome.
Which unfortunately she had retired at that point. I wasn't able to fulfill my mum's dream. So in that respect, I was relieved, but had loads of questions. And obviously at that time, it's still talking about the deficit perspective. So for me, it was about how can I improve it? How can I be better? Not really focusing on strengths. And then my recent diagnosis, I think, was slightly different because I had more exposure and more connections with other people who were neurodivergent, who had ADHD, autism, dyslexia, dyspraxia, the whole range, and looking at the different types of lived experience and how it showed up. And I think I'm still on that journey now. So I think my initial response as someone who's also going through perimenopause, hence the reason why I went for it as well,
same.
was more around what were my next steps? What can I do? This is something I deal with my clients, but how am I showing up like I'm telling my clients to do for myself? So there was a little bit of grief around what I could do knowing this knowledge, the support I could have got in my pharmaceutical career, how I could embed the things I've learned from my practice and what I know from my clients to myself. But a lot of it was around empowerment, around really an exploration and curiosity, which I really focus my practices basically on curiosity around what does that mean to me? What does it mean about the people around me? And how do I want to navigate that now I have that diagnosis? And really, I actually documented my thoughts before, during my assessment and like the week after to kind of really have a deeper understanding about how that shows up for me. So again, that's something I can kind of share to others around that experience. So look out for it. It will come. And I'm still on that journey now. So
that's awesome. That's such a nice story because it's so relatable as well. Like for me, it was very similar. I was first told that, oh, it's because of your ADHD. And I took quite a bit of offense. You know, I was like, what? What do you mean? I'm a clinician. I'm working in this field as the person that should know. And, you know, I was very naive because I now know you know more if you go through the experience yourself. If it's lived experience, obviously you're going to know more than just like the theoretical part. But there was this moment of anger for me and kind of sadness because I was like, okay, well, how do I help others if I'm also struggling? And again, that's very naive because you can help people more when you go through the process with them.
I think that's the one thing people don't understand when you've got a lived experience and you're working with someone, whether it's therapy or from coaching, is that you're navigating that. You're constantly learning. As humans, we are constantly curious and learning. But as neurodivergent individuals, we're learning about ourselves. I'm very open about that, particularly on my Instagram, because I want to show people that I haven't necessarily got it all figured out. I'm still building my toolkit, and that's okay.
Yeah.
You know, it's about finding the ones that are the most challenging and dealing with those ones first. But things are going to change because if I got diagnosed in my early 20s, I wouldn't be going through perimenopause, and it will change again and things will adapt. And life has an impact. And that's one of the things we need to take into consideration. There's not going to be an instant fix. But what there is going to be is an evolution. And the things that me and you are creating is tools. So when new things come up, we can learn to dip in our toolbox, grab those things and try and see if they can help us. And that's the most important thing.
Yeah, I really like that. And I like the fact that you've documented it too. I documented my journey with medication. So before during, and now I'm taking a break of medication, and just like the differences. And then understanding that you can take from those previous moments of, okay, now I'm really anxious, but the medication made me able to concentrate more on one thing at a time. And then I can use it now when I'm not taking medication. And I think it's very similar to going through the process of a diagnosis, because you can remember and you should give time for the person that you were before the diagnosis and kind of give that love to that person. This actually leads me to my next question, because I need to stay on track with my ADHD here. What is often misunderstood?
I think a lot of people, either who are just about to go through a diagnosis or family friends, assume that when you get a diagnosis, suddenly everything clicks into place and you know what is going on, how it's impacting you, what you're going to say, how you're going to get support. And this is what I deal with a lot in my practice, particularly when working with managers, because they assume that you know. And what I'm finding is you don't. It's the start of the journey. There's a lot of emotions going in, and every step is emotional. You start thinking about who you were, and like you said, the grief, the sadness around who you were. You think about the grief of sadness of who you could have become. There's feelings around, what do I do now? And then how do I actually communicate that to others to get support if they're around me? Or where do I want to just sit with that for a bit and try and explore that? I think that's the bit that people don't understand. They really don't realize that it doesn't happen overnight. And sometimes you don't know the words. Sometimes you don't even know what your emotions mean. So for example, I'm going through therapy and very open about the therapy support I'm getting, particularly with my ADHD diagnosis. And I also have hidden disabilities as well. So I'm also managing physical fatigue and cognitive fatigue and how that shows up for me personally. But one of the things I talk about was I thought I was really good with my emotions. And I realized I need the emotional wheels. So I have them permanently on my laptop to help me check in to actually identify what emotion that is, because I'm very much about sensations in my body and trying to convert that sensations into words. Sometimes I really struggle. So if anybody's seen the emotion wheel, they're basically a wheel which kind of goes with the high level emotions that we're used to: sad, anger, happy. And they kind of go out into deeper emotions or deeper levels. It really helps me associate that emotion to the word I know it is linked to. And some of that's around my dyslexia, trying to connect words, and some of it's around my ADHD. So that also helps me connect to my emotions on this journey. But some people don't realize that. So you need to find what works for you and how you can navigate that. Once you understand a little bit around one part, it may not be all of it, but one part. Then a lot of challenges is, how do I communicate that to others? So all of this is a journey. And I think people need to give themselves a bit of time and grace. Sometimes you might connect with someone more than others. So lean into the people around you to help you figure that out. But I know there's a lot of people that are doing this on their own. And I think Caboose's app really helps you realize you're not alone. There's networks and communities out there that can help you find spaces if the people around you aren't as supportive as you like, or you're not really quite sure around disclosure and things like that. So I think first be curious and try and see if you can understand what challenges are for you. If you can find the words, because we do go by words or some form of expression, art or dance or any sort of thing that can help you connect, and then find those spaces where you can get some support.
Yeah, the belonging is so important. And like you said, when we as coaches or therapists realize that we're also struggling with these same things and we share that with others and learn from our clients and vice versa, that's when you really start feeling like you're part of a community. Caboose is wonderful for that. And, you know, these discussions too, I think I always feel more seen after one of these discussions, because I'm like, oh, okay, another person that thinks like me. That's great.
That's why I love doing podcasts and talks about it, because I sit there and I have a conversation with the person who usually has got a lived experience, and you're just like, oh yeah, I do that too. I think people underestimate community and connections that way. You don't have to do it on your own.
Yeah, exactly. It's so much better with somebody that just understands. And also pre-diagnosis, I used to have so many friends. And now post-diagnosis, I have fewer friends. But the ones that I can really say, look, this is too loud. This restaurant is too much for me. Or this person is just too intense. Or I'm pretty intense myself. So I think I can't have another one that's very intense around me.
Yeah.
We spoke a little bit about the grief and relief that you felt. But was there anything other that you wanted to mention about post-diagnosis? Was there a relief that you felt?
Yeah, I think there was definitely a sense of relief. and particularly with the ADHD assessment, because I was actually surprised. I was surprised that I got diagnosed, just being very, very honest. I thought it would probably be more my perimenopause symptoms. And so that was like, okay. But I was more surprised around the diagnosis. So I thought I had ADHD attentive. And then she was like, no, you're combined. And I remember asking her, are you sure? Are you sure? She's like, yeah, I'm sure. And I was like, okay. So even the little language within that kind of made me reflect and think about it. And now on reflection, knowing what I know, I can see where that's coming from and I can understand that. But I think one of the things that I was relieved about is also understanding a little bit more about me, because as an adult, we don't really make space to explore ourselves and really understand ourselves. So for me, it was like, okay, now where do I start? And again, like I said before, I lean into curiosity most of the time, not just in my practice, but for myself, and always kind of talking to the people around me, exploring what's surrounding my clients, other people, and who do also do what I do. So yeah, I think it was more relief than grief. I think, and just to kind of counterweight the grief piece, because my hidden disabilities are very physical, where I've had a lot of grief around that. I think with my neurodivergence, there was less grief, because I think with the physical stuff, it impacts my physical being so dramatically more that I think I had something bigger to put my grief on. So this was more like, I can do something about this part, where the physical stuff I really struggled to. And I suppose I got empowerment knowing that I work in that realm. I've learned some stuff. I know some techniques. I know how it can show up. So I got some ownership about taking those next steps.
Yeah, I mean, it reminds me of the identity part, right? So like if we think about neurodivergence, to me is now part of my identity, and I'm proud of it. I go to therapy. I've gone to therapy for the last, I think, 14 years. I think all people should have therapy, but I think it's part of our identity. Neurodivergence becomes part of it, and the things that we need to put in place around it. It is maybe a little bit of a grief period where you think about the things that you could have done and should have done and could have been in place earlier. But then it's a relief. I remember being so relieved for knowing why I would always pick an argument with my partner in the grocery store. Way back then, I always dumped my ex at a grocery store. I was like, no, I don't think we can do this anymore. And he's like, what are you talking about? And there's just that overwhelm of like sounds and people and everything. And now I know, I'm like, oh, okay, I shouldn't be grocery shopping with anyone that I want to keep in my life. I should just not go.
Yeah, I've got
But
the
it helps.
same. I've got exactly the same, like in my head and also physically as well. I'm always on the go, to the point where fun fact, I actually fainted on London open bus. So when London used to have the open back buses, I actually fainted and fell out of the bus in the middle of Trafalgar Square
What?
in London. Yeah, I was doing so much. I had a full-time job at GSK. I had a second job because you weren't allowed to do that. I was doing photography. I was trying to buy a property. And I was doing all these different things. I was on the go, 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 go. And it got to the point where again, one of my sensory things around food and then water. So I never know. And when I'm hungry, I never know when I'm thirsty. And I fainted and fell out of the back of the bus. And I was very lucky that tourists grabbed my purse and my camera, and I was taken to hospital and I was okay. But
you didn't get hurt fainting from...
I got a few injuries, but I was okay. But my point is, I always tell people that story because I always say it's like the God of the universe telling me that I need to stop.
Yeah, no,
And now I
that's
know
a
my
big
diagnosis.
sign.
I'm like, that makes so much sense now.
Yeah.
Why I didn't stop. I didn't recognize those early signals of, actually, Danielle, you need to slow down. And this is why I'm very intentional with pacing and slowing down. I talk about that in the series, but pacing is really, really important because we get an opportunity not only to slow things down that we all kind of need generally, especially in the world we live in right now, but also we get to observe and see some of these, I suppose, amber flags so that it stops us going into the red where we're overwhelmed. So the amber flag will be, I'm walking with my partner to the shop. Maybe I don't go to the grocery shop. Maybe you stay in the car and I go in, or you go in and I sit in the car and I play music and just decompress.
Yeah.
Those type of things that when you pace, you're able to see the patterns.
Yeah, I'm so happy that you're okay from that accident,
Yeah.
because that's horrible. I really like the pacing. I pace myself with my tone of voice, so I speak slower and deeper. So my voice is really deep when I do these things because it calms me. So when I'm speaking deeper and slower, something about that tone really helps my nervous system to calm down.
Yeah.
We talked about identity, but how does identity begin to shift when somebody finally has an explanation for their lived experience according to you? Like we said a few things now, but was there anything else for you that shifted?
Yeah, I suppose it links back to that grief again. It's that identity that you were who you were before your diagnosis. And what I find with a lot of my clients, when they start questioning who they were and the years that they have lived their life. I'll give you an example. When I co-founded the Neurodiversity Network at GSK, there was a group of us who co-founded, about 7 or 8 of us that co-founded. Some were going through diagnosis, some were parents of children who were neurodivergent. And there was one of the co-founders who I think had a diagnosis while we were setting things up. And they were really struggling. They had done this scientific job for, I think it was like 10, 15 years at that point. They'd been there for a long time and they were questioning whether they were good enough. And I thought, this is really interesting because you've done all this work. You're still here. You're making ground. You're having impact, but you're questioning who you are just on this diagnosis alone. Interestingly, fast forward 6 years later, it got to the point where in between that time, he had other obligations. So I said to him, look, you know what? You're always going to be a co-founder. Go off, do the work you need to do for your work. Go and find how things show up for you in terms of your journey. If you ever want to come back to the group and work with the ERG or, work with the network, you can always come back. Every 6 months to a year, I checked in. And that's the big change for me, because as he was going through it, he still was questioning who he was. And what I realized with him was it was more around the behavior and the scripts that he held himself about who he was and his identity and who he was now. And we had a long discussion around it doesn't define you. What you were, what happened in your past was real and was a part of who you are. And where you are now is still real and you are capable to do your job. What you probably need to explore now is understanding yourself. It doesn't dismiss who you were before, because that is true. And all the emotions and feelings, everything that came up was true. We're now trying to navigate knowing what I know now and understanding what I know about myself going forward. What things truly were challenges. So for example, for me, I have a real big issue with clothing. Now, I just thought I was sensitive with the itchy clothing material we had in the 90s. I just thought, okay, we got itchy fabric and motifs with bad stitching. That was just me being really, really sensitive. Now I know that actually I have got sensitivity to clothing and touch. So now, knowing what I know, the same way with him knowing what he knows, how can I navigate the space differently? And that's where the work that me and you do around self-advocacy and understanding that, and how do I find that in workplaces, around my community, around my family, really helps. Because it's about, okay, this thing really does irritate me, like you said, the sound and the noise. Okay, what can I do about it? I'm going to wear headphones. Okay, I'm going to wear headphones when I'm out and about, even at family events. Okay, what's it going to mean to the people around me? They're going to see that I'm wearing headphones. They may question. So it's about, okay, who's the best person I can get some support with to try and understand how I communicate that and make that safe space if possible. But that's the bit, that's the journey. And so that doesn't mean that you don't change who you are. It's building on and being probably a bit more, I suppose, authentic about who you are and what you need. And that's the challenge. I think people really struggle to navigate and understand, how do I find that authenticity around it? Do I have permission to be authentic? Is it safe to be authentic? That's a part of understanding your identity.
Yeah, I think it's confidence as well. And then definitely a safe person, and having that person in your family or friendship circle or your partner, if that's your safe person, but really sharing how this experience or environment or person makes you feel, and then finding ways to help and accommodate and support, and being quite an advocate for yourself, because it's so hard sometimes. I know it's also hard to be an advocate all the time for yourself, because it's like, okay, I have to constantly tell people I can't go there. I don't want to do this. I don't want to go to a barbecue where there are like 20 people that I don't know, because I'm going to be drained afterwards. I might enjoy it in the moment or pretend that I'm enjoying it, but then be drained. Or in the work environment. So I like the fact that you said that you need to find that person, make sure that it's a safe person, and then disclose and then find ways. We talked a bit about your past and your diagnosis and how you could change things, but were there any self-blaming from your side, and how did you move past that? What did you do that made a difference for you?
Yeah. So though I talk about this colleague going through that journey and it was quite a drastic version, I also went through the same thing with both my diagnosis. I think with my dyslexic one, it was a lot of how can you step up? Remember, it was all about the language back then. So it was about, well, how can I show up? What do I need to do to improve my writing? I need to put myself in this pressure, which added a lot of extra stress into my life. And when I was bench scientist, one of my roles was writing these quality reports that used to go to the FDA and MHRA. And I pushed myself to do those. And it was great in terms of my writing, but what I wasn't able to do in true advocacy space was explore how I would be able to work at my best and what that's that like and try and find ways to do it. I did find it as I did more of those reports, I did find ways. So for example, we used to have these really qualified people that would sign off on our reports. And so instead of me sending it a big report over to them and watch them put red pen as an adult, you know, when you're 25, you're like, I'm back at school with red pen again. I used to set up meetings with them. I set up meetings and we'd talk through it. And then I would just pick up because I knew that if they could explain something verbally, I'd understand it way better than them giving me comments. So I used to sit down with them and go through it. So I was finding different ways of helping myself. I just at the time didn't realize, but there was still that blame. And I think going through my newest diagnosis, the biggest one was, how did I not know? Like, how did I not know? You know, I work with individuals, particularly individuals with ADHD, more than probably any other of my clients in terms of neurodivergence. How did I not see that in myself? If I only knew what could have happened. I remember thinking about it when we co-founded the network. I remember thinking, maybe I've got ADHD. Why did I not push myself then to go for it and what I could have done now? Not just for me, but also for my clients, for my community, in regards to, you know, my family and learning how I could communicate differently, all of those things. But I got to the point, as I always do, and this is me putting my project management hat. There's two things I learned from working in pharmaceuticals. Number one, when you do audit, you don't talk about what you don't know. If you don't know something, you just say, I don't know. And there was something empowering about that. From a technical point, you don't want the auditors to know that you don't know something. So you go and find out, and you never assume you're the most expert person. And I really felt that was really humbling. Not everybody does it, but anybody in pharmaceuticals or science will know that. And the second thing is around drawing the line. So in vaccine development, as you probably know, post-COVID, and I joined in the middle of COVID, it was a pandemic. Everything was pushed forward. And so every day, every hour, something would change. As a project manager, what you had to do is draw a line in the sand and say, I can only work with what I know now. And I think that those two things have really stayed with me, even now when it comes to myself, my own personal development and exploration. I can only work with what I know now. So the blame then shifted from I should have known to I didn't know. I didn't have the data points. I always talk about data points. I'm a little scientist. So yeah, I always talk about data points. I didn't have the data. So I had to draw a line in the sand with what I knew now and go with what I did and make decisions and make actions and reflect on what I know now. And there's something empowering and kind of calming and settling around knowing that. And accepting that that's okay. That's probably one of the biggest things. A lot of people don't because they're comparing themselves to others, the people's journey. There's loads of people now, especially talking about ADHD and autism. And my advice is, you know, you are you. You're in your world. What do you know about yourself now? Draw a line and think, okay, if I need support around this, what would it be like for me? You have to work with where it shows up for you. And I think when you give yourself permission to do that, shame kind of goes a little bit because it's less about what I should have done and more about what I can do.
I really like all of those things that you just said. And I love that, just drawing a line in the sand and saying, look, this is what I did and this is what I knew and that's it. And then moving forward.
But actually, it's a muscle. I always tell my clients, it's a muscle. The more you practice, the more you feel comfortable. And it's also how you communicate it your own way. That helps with some of that shame and around that confidence. So I talk about scripts a lot. Write a script down that helps you know how to say it the way that you talk and then put it aside. Because you're going to change it for different environments and that helps you have confidence around self-advocacy. But yeah, I suppose things have changed so much in terms of neurodiversity as a dialogue over the last, say, probably 10 years. It's crazy how much it's changed and how people are more open about it. People are willing to listen. People are willing to support. There's also a lot of noise and a lot of confusion, which is why we do what we do and why Caboose is there to help cut out all that noise.
Yeah.
and to help people really understand what it means for them, because it does mean differently for different things, different people.
I want to talk about masking, though. I want to
Mm,
gear over to masking.
mm.
Masking is often a big part of neurodivergent experiences. After your diagnosis, did anything shift for you in how you navigated everyday situations? What was your experience like?
Yeah, and I just wanted to add, just in case there's other people watching back, masking is, I know they use masking very generally, and we talk about it in your divergent perspective, but there obviously is different types of masking. I just wanted to make it very clear. There's different communities who mask very similar. And so for me, there's different levels of masking, but I'm just going to be talking about it from a neurodivergent perspective for today's chat. So I think, interestingly, I think my willingness or drive to unmask in certain spaces came before my ADHD diagnosis. And I think this is why, even though co-founding the Neurodiverse Network was great for the community, it was great for us that was sitting in that community as well. I'd been there about 15 years at that point. I was, very privileged in terms of my career and the opportunities. And I think at that point, I remember sitting down and saying, I just want to help this organization support its workforce. I was always involved in safety, even when I started as a scientist. I was always very intrigued about, we give so much of our time to our work, and our work has certain regulations around health and safety to support us so we can show up at our work and be comfortable and innovate. So I was very much an advocate in that space. And when I started doing stuff around neurodiversity in the workplace and neuroinclusion, it was around, that's no different. We should be getting support. And so a lot of that was around advocacy space and my drive. And I have a very strong justice drive as well, around how could I make impact? And I was like, I'm going to drop my mask a bit. And I remember particularly there was a call around just general D&I, because we were looking at how we could collaborate, gender and sexual orientation and race and ethnicity. We were trying to bring all of that with neurodivergence as well, looking at intersectionality. I was on the call. We had some new budding young people on the call, like, oh, we could do this or we could do that. I sat there, and the more I listened, the more I got the passion, and it just got more and more hard. I was like, I need to say something, but I can't say something outside. I bolted home. I've never run so quickly, jumped to my laptop, put my hand up virtually and just sat there, wait. I don't think my ADHD brain was coping very well with that weight. I was so eager. And the person who's running it, facilitator, knew who I was. And there was a few people, and they're like, anybody else? I see Danielle's on the call. Thank you for waiting patiently. What would you like to say? And I said very openly, I've been here for this amount of time. It took me a while to get promoted. Everything you said, we have done it. What can we do that's different? And that was the biggest thing. I took off my mask. I can really say I took off my mask fully at work. I took the risk. And the reason why I did that, because I was like, I'm not the only one who felt that way, but I'm going to be the one to say it. Nice. And loads of people messaged me directly, and I had just all these pings of people messaging me going, oh my God, thank you. I felt the same way. Even afterwards, I had loads of people message me saying, I heard the call. Thank you so much. And that was the first time I was genuinely, authentically Danielle. And I know that was very unique. I know some people have tried to do things like that and it hasn't been safe. I was very much in a very the stars align moment for me, but that then really helped my confidence. And there are times when even within the role where it hasn't been safe for me and I've had to put that mask on until I feel there's safety. Sometimes there's only certain people I can do that to. But it's something that I think people need to manage and monitor around how they feel comfortable, around what masking is like and what level they want to unmask to. As a Black woman, it's not always okay for me to unmask the way I want to truly unmask in spaces, especially in real life. And I think one takeaway I would say to people listening to this, whether you're live or recording, is I took some time off since that to really think about what made me do that. And where would I know it's safe? And how would I know it's safe? And who would I want to mask to? It's a bit like disclosure. I always talk to my clients around, I need to disclose. Why? Well, either two things. The organization told them to, or they feel they have to. I'm like, okay, what do you want to tell them? Do you want to say you're dyslexic? Do you want to just say you've got challenges with reading and writing? Do you want to just say I need support? I need this tech? Like what level? Who do you want? Your manager, the whole organization, your team, an individual you work with? What do you want for them? What do you expect from the other person? And these are all these questions I bring up in my sessions, because like masking, people need to take time to explore what it means to them. So I know there's a lot of things going online about people. You should unmask and da da da. Yeah, not for everybody, it's always safe. And people need to take time to think about, what do I want to unmask to and to who? So if you had unmasked or told that boyfriend in the time that, oh yeah, I had a situation where in the grocery store, it's like, okay, so how can I support you so you don't feel so overwhelmed, so we don't break up in the middle of the grocery store? Those type of things, and finding safe spaces to do that. And unmasking doesn't mean telling the whole world that you're neurodivergent. And actually, it's really interesting with some people who are so vocal about it. I'm very curious and intrigued about people who are so vocal about their neurodivergence in regards to how it's supporting them as an individual and other personality traits that might come up with that. But I think it's also important to know that unmasking might just be that one friend.
Yeah.
I've got a new friend now, and she knows that noise has an impact. That's unmasking.
I really like you advocating for yourself at work. I think that's great. That's amazing. And it took a lot of courage. But like you said, it's not every opportunity that we have to do it, and we can do it in different ways. Like, you had a lot of courage there speaking out, but maybe another person could just send an email or,
100%.
like you said, like speak to somebody in a team who can bring that up to a higher level manager.
Yeah.
So that's amazing. You were also speaking about relationships a bit, and I want to ask you one more question or two more questions, and then we have an audience question as well. But I want to ask you about relationships, and what ways has your understanding of yourself influenced your relationships and the communication with them, the people in your life, and how your needs are understood by them too, by others.
So I'm going to be transparent. It is a work in progress. It is a constant work in progress, mainly because you're meeting new people. But if you think about the people that are close to me, my family knew I was dyslexic. Obviously, I've only recently got diagnosed with ADHD, and they weren't brought on that journey. So my wider family, not my direct family, like my mum and my husband, but my wider family only recently find out. And so I think they haven't really had an opportunity to explore that, and they're quite new to the dialogue. I think one of the things I'm very lucky to be working in this area as well and supporting others is around how I communicate that, and knowing that they might need time to understand, which was really frustrating, because it kind of was like, you're my people, so you need to be on board with this. And it's actually like, they need time to process. And my mum has known me for the X amount of years I've been alive, and she's the one who filled in the family form. And I remember her saying, I don't want to mess this up for you. And I was like, Mum, you can't. You can't mess this up. Just put your lived experience of what you had, because it will give us a genuine diagnosis of whether it's true or not. So when I got diagnosed, I told her, and she's older, she's a boomer, so she's still figuring out what this neurodivergent thing is as a generational thing. But she was like, oh, okay. And so we sat down and we talked about things. It takes time, but there are little indications that can show small wins. And one of them was before we had the heat waves in the UK. It was really hot, and I had a puffer jacket on. And my mum always jokes to me, oh, you're always cold. And I'm like, no, I'm not always cold. But I never, ever said that, really. And so I had a puffer jacket on, and she looked at me. She's like, I've got a puffer jacket on. And I was like, yeah. She goes, is that because you're cold, or is it something else? And I was like, it's something else.
That's so
And I was like, yeah.
goosebumps.
And I've never felt so
Yeah.
seen.
Yeah.
I talked to her about, why I used to wear knitted skirts in the snow and not trousers, because I'd have that whole texture thing I was talking about before. And the puffer jacket wasn't about heat. It was about soothing and grounding from going from a nervous hospital appointment. And I got seen in that moment. And that was enough. That was a massive win for me to be able to communicate and for her to understand my needs. So when I talk about things with noise, me and my husband joke about noise. We love loud noise when it comes to our music. Sometimes we need quiet noise. I spend a lot of time in my bedroom settling, and he knows that sometimes that isn't just physical. I need time, so he gives me space. I talk about it with my stepson. And so they may not understand or relate. Sometimes they do. Sometimes they don't. But it's allowing and having that respect to allow me to show up in my spaces that I feel safe and question with curiosity, and me to learn that when they're questioning it is coming from curiosity, not doubt. And also they might find it hard for them to communicate their questions to me. So all of these things can be quite challenging. It's an ongoing thing, and it evolves your relationship. If you do have conflict, because I know that everybody has a really supportive family dynamic, then find those other people, like I said, find those other people that do, and let them be the starting point, because that would bring up the confidence around how I could share it with other people that maybe disagree or don't even think. There's still people here who don't even think that neurodivergence is a thing.
Yeah.
And it's hard.
And sometimes those are family members.
Exactly. They're family and friend groups, 100%.
Like But the funny thing is always like usually when they're family members and their moms or dads, usually they are also neurodivergent.
Yeah, exactly. And some of that could be around them hearing that information now that they're
Exactly.
so vocal,
Being
and
in
them
denial.
actually, yeah, rejecting themselves than their
Yeah.
child. Yeah. Yeah, all
Yeah.
sorts of things.
I wish we had more time for more questions. We do have time for a quick question from the audience.
Hmm.
When we're called to find safety and authenticity, and for example, the algorithm rewards it too, yet many still feel unsure. Care to comment in any perspective?
Finding safety and authenticity can be quite difficult. It's trying to understand what safety is first. I think my question to Mike would be around what is safety and what is authenticity to that person. The word authenticity has been thrown around a lot recently, but I think it's understanding what that means for us and finding safety in that is really important. It's quite a challenging question to answer, actually.
Yeah, that's why I gave it to you.
I might have to reflect on that one and actually feed that back to you, Clara, in
That's
a
so,
more
that,
concise
do you
way,
know,
because that's really
yeah,
intriguing. I love the question. I love
yeah.
the question.
Do you know, I really like that you have the different hats that you brought in earlier when you said, okay, let's reflect back. That's a good question. I think it's a good one for the audience to also answer when they watch this in the comment section and then maybe just
Yeah.
share because it is like finding a safety and authenticity is a difficult thing. I think you need to really find it in yourself first, like
Yeah,
find the safety
definitely.
in and authenticity in yourself. To be honest, I found safety and authenticity with my pet first. I was like,
Mm,
this is too loud. Let's walk away. So I would tell Boris first, and then I was like, okay, we need to exit. So I practiced, like you said, it was a muscle, right? So I practiced
yeah.
with them, and then I did it with my best friend Ash, and she would just say, okay, well, let's just leave. And I was like, thank you so
Mm.
much, and not mentioning it's my ADHD.
Yes, not having to name and label it is really important. This is what shows up for
Mm,
me. But I'm intrigued that sometimes being authentic isn't safe. I mentioned this
mm,
before. So then when you're talking about, for example, the algorithm reward, it's around I should show up the way I had. And I have to tell you, when I first decided to do my business and be on social media the way I was, I made a massive list of all the things that were going on in my life that I could talk about. I was very vocal. So I'm very vocal about being also having endometriosis, for example. And I put down what was my non-negotiables, what was I never going to mention. Some of that was because it's not just my story, it's other people's story. I put a hard line against what I would share. So even though I was authentic to myself and that was a part of me showing up, but I might bring up part of this in my private practice, which was closed between me and my clients, I was very clear around what was safe for me and I was willing to take out to the world.
nice.
And I
Yeah.
think so when we talk about the example of the algorithm reward, that's what comes to my head is really taking time to think about what you want to say and what you don't want to say. And it's okay not to say everything.
Exactly.
We need to, everybody's like, oh, I should no, if you don't feel comfortable, don't. And even if you feel like, well, if I don't, then no one's going to know, then how could you say it differently? Like I said with the dyslexia thing, do I say I'm dyslexic? Do I say I've got some challenges with reading and writing and some sensory stuff? Do I just say I need this kit to help me show up at my best? They're all disclosing, they're all being authentic, but they're showing different levels of how you feel safe about communicating that out. And if you're unsure, do that work. Yeah.
Danielle, this was absolutely lovely. And I would love to speak to you for another hour, but I know you've got people to let loose there so that they can be noisy again in the background. So I'm going to let you go. But I just want to say thank you for your time. You've been such a joy speaking with, and you've got such nice ideas and just really golden nuggets to share. So I love that. Thank you so much for being here. And just for the audience members too, for being here. This is just a reminder that we have a range of these divergent discussions with individuals with lived experience coming up. You can find all the details in the Caboose app, as well as our newly launched Neuro Nuggets. Neuro Nuggets are short, practical guides where Danielle has also shared some of those for us that help you understand how your brain works and find ways to make work and life easier. There are also 4 workplaces to help create more inclusive spaces created by neurodivergent people with lived experience for neurodivergent people and the people around them in the workplaces too. Thank you so much for being here, everyone. Thanks, Danielle.
Thank you so much. Bye.